The male protagonist of this anime seems to be the worst student in the school, like an unnoticed shadow, but is actually a super warrior. He enjoys being unnoticed, and always hides in the dark to explore the limits of human power. Later, an accident causes him to travel to another world and form a shadow garden full of strong and high-status beauties, such as a human princess, an elven magician, and a beastkin warrior. Now, let's reveal the story of how the male protagonist becomes invincible in another world and conquers these beautiful women. The male protagonist of this anime, Shadow, has a very popular deskmate, Akane, who is known as the Campus Belle. She has been Shadow's deskmate for 3 months, but Shadow has never called her by the right name, which makes her very irritated. However, she never reveals her true emotions in public, because of her prominent family lineage, coupled with the fact that she is a star who appeared in TV series. She needs to pay more attention to her image. One day after school, Akane finds her driver is absent and never responds to her calls, so she decides to return home on foot alone. While making her way down a desolate street, she meets a muscular man who gives off an uneasy vibe. She instantly tries to run away but is blocked by the man's partner. As she struggles against their grip, she seems to see her deskmate, Shadow, before she loses consciousness. By the time Akane wakes up, she has been locked up. The strong man and his accomplice killed her driver and kidnapped her. The thugs seem to do it for money, but actually, they are hired to take revenge on Akane's father. At this moment, Shadow is outside the door. This ordinary student takes out his backpack, which contains his disguises to hide his identity. The strong man's accomplice casts greedy eyes on the pretty girl Akane. As he is about to do something, Shadow shows up with a headgear to cover his face. The air around him becomes terrifying. Shadow knocks off the opponent's pistol, and after a set of consecutive attacks, he wins easily. Next, it is the turn of the strong man. The thug throws away his pistol even though he has seen Shadow's strength, which means he is very confident in his own. As a veteran, the strong man is much more difficult to deal with, hurting Shadow in his first move. However, the injury doesn't scare Shadow at all. On the contrary, it ignites his enthusiasm since he hasn't encountered a formidable adversary for a long time. As Shadow becomes serious about the battle, the situation is instantly reversed. The muscular man's arm sustains significant damage, rendering him unable to launch any counterattacks and can only focus on defense. His once arrogant demeanor also vanishes, replaced by a desperate attempt to reach for the pistol, seeing it as his last chance. Yet, Shadow's movements are astonishingly fast, with a set of which he defeats the muscular man completely. Seeing Shadow approaching, Akane is very scared that the man may kill her as well. Luckily, he just cuts the rope for her, to not reveal his identity. Shadow then hides, wondering if he can find stronger opponents somewhere else. After that, Akane's father pulls strings to suppress the kidnapping because he doesn't want her daughter to be exposed to the public because of such an event. And the police never figure out who saved Akane. When Akane returns to school, Shadow calls her name correctly, which surprises Akane. But what she doesn't expect is that this is the last time they see each other. Shortly after, a traffic accident is reported on TV, and the victim turns out to be Shadow. Subsequently, a memory of Shadow's previous life emerges. He stood out from his peers since childhood, when everyone aspired to be superheroes or perhaps even infamous villains. Shadow's aspiration was to become an unnoticed but formidable man. But when he grew up, Shadow was disappointed to find that no matter how strong he was, he couldn't have supernatural powers like the heroes in novels. Even if he defeated a heavily armed army, he couldn't defend against a nuclear bomb. At the last moment when Shadow's consciousness dissipated, he erupted with a cry of reluctance in his heart. He wanted to surpass the limits of human power to become the strongest. Back to the present time. After Shadow dies in a car accident, he gets reincarnated as a newborn baby. His mother is very gentle while his father is a bald baron. It seems Shadow gets a good script in this world. In a noble family, he doesn't have to worry about starving or being attacked, which allows him to discover the world and find the most suitable way to become stronger. Shadow's family has a lineage of spells words, and there is always a powerful spells word in every generation. For example, Shadow's sister, Claire, shows amazing talents. In fact, Shadow is even more talented than his sister, but he likes to do great things in secret. So when Claire attracts everyone's attention, Shadow disguises himself as the ordinary. At the age of 10, Shadow has already possessed remarkable strength. He frequently ventures out at night and takes down ruthless bandits effortlessly even if enemies are armed with guns and holding numerical advantage. Shadow's weapons and defensive equipment bear the traits of the slime, which can not only attack enemies from a distance with various forms, but also shift into defensive formations. General bandits can only bully ordinary people, and are no match for Genius Shadow, who can eliminate a whole bandit team in 10 minutes or so. Since the victims have been killed by the bandits, the properties then belong to Shadow. When Shadow is counting his harvest tonight, he accidentally finds a pile of rotting flesh. Shadow feels the strange magic fluctuations on the flesh and realizes this is probably a demon-possessed body. It's said the one who gets possessed by the demon will gradually become rotting flesh. Shadow starts secret research on it for a month and finally lifts the curse, turning the rotting flesh into its true form, a blonde-haired elven girl. At this point, Shadow comes up with an idea. He has been longing to form his secret power, and the elven girl is his initial candidate for recruitment. He lies that the demon-possessed body is in fact a hoax. The truth hides behind the legend where 3 heroes conquered the demon Diabolos and saved the world. However, before he died, Diabolos cast a curse upon the 3 heroes, claiming that their descendants would all become rotting flesh. Later, Diabolos' followers deliberately spread rumors that those who turned into rotting flesh were demon-possessed, so that the world would expel and imprison these heroes' descendants. Therefore, when the followers try to resurrect Diabolos, no hero's descendants will come to ruin it. Shadow can tell the elven girl is burning with the longing for revenge. He seizes the opportunity to name her Alpha, promising to form an army to fight against the cult of Diabolos. Alpha has been brainwashed by Shadow, swearing that she will devote all her life to Shadow. In fact, what Shadow said was all made up. He just wants to form his forces to fight against those powerful but evil organizations. To his surprise, Alpha attaches much attention to the revenge and starts to think about where to make money and recruit. 3 years later, Shadow continues pretending to be an ordinary before his family, but every time he competes with Claire, he will teach her some skills without being noticed by anyone because he thinks her movements are too slow. As a result, Claire always feels strange that whenever she engages in a contest with her weaker brother, her combat abilities seem to be improved. Claire is 15 years old this year, and it's time for her to go study at the Spellsword School in the capital. But before setting out, Claire is missing. Her room is in chaos, which proves there was once a fierce fight happening. Shadow soon starts his rescue, and the maid beside him reveals her real form. She is named Beta, Shadow's subordinate recruited by Alpha. In the past 3 years, Alpha helped Shadow recruit 6 powerful subordinates, plus Alpha herself known as the Shadow 7. They suspect it was the cult of Diabolos that kidnapped Claire because the cult thinks Claire is one of the descendants of the heroes, which bothers Shadow. It seems Shadow 7 really takes his lies seriously, and they consider every evil person a member of the cult of Diabolos. Shadow quickly switches the topic and orders Beta to get others gathered to look for Claire. He casually throws a dart into the map, which misleads Beta to think Shadow throws the dart to instruct them to where Claire is locked. Beta admires Shadow's scouting ability. At night, the kidnapper is interrogating Claire, believing that she is also a demon-possessed person. He wants to unravel the mystery of why Claire hasn't changed into a rotting flesh. Later, he stumbles upon the revelation that her prowess steadily advances each time she engages in a contest with her brother. Therefore, he speculates that it might be Shadow who prevents Claire from rotting. Claire is worried that the kidnappers will strike at her brother, and tries to stop them though she is injured, but she is no match for the kidnapper and gets punched to the ground. Just then, the kidnapper's companion brings bad news that 7 powerful girls broke in, whose strength is comparable to the elite soldiers, and the guards are no match. When the kidnapper rushes out to check, his companions have all been slain. Shadow 7 tells the kidnapper that they are here to defeat the plot of the cult of Diabolos. Shadow's made-up story is unexpectedly of great concern to the kidnapper, who fights with Shadow 7 while asking them where they knew it from. After a few rounds, the kidnapper finds that he is no match for Shadow 7, so he takes a pill that makes him stronger. He pretends to launch a strong attack to distract Shadow 7's attention. Seizing the opportunity to flee, the kidnapper, convinced of his escape to safety, accidentally encounters Shadow, who is lost. Actually, the kidnapper is already very strong and possesses greater magical power than Alpha. Unfortunately, he meets immense talents, Shadow, and is defeated. Eventually, the kidnapper gets killed and his pocket watch with a photo of his daughter is also taken by Shadow. After that, Claire returns home. As she recovered, she sets out to the capital for her studies. To Shadow's surprise, Shadow 7 claims to leave as well to expand their organization to fight against Diabolos. But Shadow thinks it may be their excuse to leave, since they've grown up to figure out the cult of Diabolos is made up and it's time to stop the childish game. But it doesn't affect Shadow that much. He comes to the capital of the kingdom alone and continues pretending to be ordinary. In his past life as an Earthling, he didn't have superpowers. Now he gets to be reborn in this world with sword skills and magic. He will try his best to achieve the dream hidden in his heart, even just by himself. He wants to be the Eminence in Shadow, who can be low profile but has the power to control the whole world. Shadow's disguise is very successful. At the age of 15, he is promoted to the same Midgar Academy as his sister. Because of his mediocre performance, he is assigned to a rundown apartment far from the city center. To not be late, he has to catch the train to school every day. 7 months have passed since Shadow got into the academy, where he met 2 new friends. They make a bet on the school exam, and Shadow, who lost the game, is punished for confessing his love to Princess Alexia. Alexia is so popular at school that there are a lot of excellent boys confessing love to her but getting rejected every day. Shadow isn't worried about getting rejected at all. He will go confessing nervously with his body shivering, and cry loud after being rejected. That's how a typical background student will act. To his astonishment, Alexia accepts his love confession, which also surprises his 2 concealed friends nearby. Consequently, Shadow, who originally wanted to be ordinary, unexpectedly becomes the focus of students in school. Wherever he does, he will attract everyone's attention and raise a discussion. The 2 students who initially encouraged Shadow to confess are now riddled with regret, believing they are more excellent than Shadow and would have succeeded if they had approached Alexia instead. At this time, Alexia sits next to Shadow, bringing a lot of delicious food. Shadow wants Alexia to hate and break up with him, so he deliberately acts like a yokel, greedily grabbing the food. However, it doesn't alienate Alexia from Shadow. Instead, she proposes to have classes with him this afternoon. Because of Alexia's recommendation, Shadow is transferred from the low-level fencing class to the elite class, where the teacher, Xenon, is a royal fencing master, and every student works harder than those in the low-level classes. During the class, instead of chit-chat noise, there is only the sound of swords clashing with swords. Shadow is surprised to find when he practices with Alexia that they have similar fencing skills. They both focus on the base of the sword instead of fancy moves. Alexia has a genius sister Iris who masters fancy fencing skills, which leads to Alexia's rating being consistently inferior to Iris's. After class, Xenon approaches Alexia. He is one of her suitors and wants to be her fiancé. Later, Alexia tells Shadow about her plan. The reason why she accepted Shadow and agreed to be his girlfriend is that she wanted to stop these suitors from harassing her. Moreover, considering Shadow's seemingly unremarkable qualifications and ordinary background, she believes she can easily boss him. Later, she mentions 2 points that make Shadow unable to reject her. Firstly, she knows from the 2 students that Shadow's confession to her was his punishment after losing the bet. If she exposes it, Shadow will be in trouble. Besides, Alexia is willing to hire Shadow with decent payment, while Shadow also wants to make money to start his organization. Therefore, he takes the job. The next few days, Alexia always holds Shadow wherever they go, but Xenon isn't jealous at all. Alexia acts more like a lady in public while showing her childish personality when she is with Shadow, complaining that Xenon hasn't given up on her. Therefore, Alexia starts hanging out around the city with Shadow, intending to be seen by more people to cause a greater impact on Xenon. Shadow can't figure out why Alexia doesn't accept Xenon, who is obviously excellent in every way. At this point, Alexia says the reason why she hates Xenon is that he is pretending to be perfect while everyone should have some flaws. 2 weeks later, Alexia and Shadow have a bitter quarrel after school. Alexia mentions the ordinary sword style that she and Shadow use, which she is actually disgusted about. If it weren't for her talent limitation, she also wants to perform the magnificent genius sword art like her sister Iris. Shadow tries to enlighten Alexia that she should just be herself instead of caring too much about others' opinions, which provokes her. When she lost to her sister Iris, that's how Iris comforted her, but it hurt Alexia's self-esteem. Shadow tells Alexia that he cares about neither the genius swordplaying nor the disaster causing heavy casualties that attract public attention. He only cares about mastering the basics of the sword skills, while his subtext is that he pursues a low-profile but powerful life which is just like basic swordsmanship. Alexia obviously doesn't get it, and she is enraged by the argument, deciding to end the relationship with Shadow. Shadow is fine with it, but the 2 students are annoying. They keep throwing questions like if Shadow is sad or not, and what has he done with Alexia as her boyfriend. Just when they are walking to the gate, they are blocked by Xenon, whose words shock and frighten them. It turns out that Alexia hasn't been back to her dorm since yesterday, and Shadow has become a suspect in kidnapping her because they had been together yesterday. Shadow meekly kneels, noticing that he and his 2 classmates have been surrounded by heavily armed soldiers. At the same time, Princess Alexia awakens from her coma, only to find herself controlled by magical shackles. Later, she notices a monster imprisoned in her neighboring cell. Strangely, the monster turns its head away to evade her gaze, seemingly unwilling to be seen by her. Just then, a researcher arrives, who is a crazy man tasked with watching over Alexia. His neurotic words reveal a piece of crucial information. That is, Alexia's royal blood can be used in the research of resurrecting the demon Diabolos. the researcher draws several tubes of Alexia's blood, and he keeps talking to himself in a frenzy, complaining about his master for sabotaging his research, which makes him even more furious. So he begins to vent on the monster in the cell. Alexia can't bear to see the monster suffering, calling the researcher back to draw her blood. The researcher then forces Alexia to eat because the longer she lives, the more blood she can provide. The monster silently watches it, with tears in his eyes. Meanwhile, poor Shadow is mistaken as the kidnapper, being brutally interrogated by the knights. But Shadow is neither afraid nor angry. Instead, he enjoys playing the coward. Shadow cries and begs for mercy, completely disguising himself as an ordinary person. Several days pass by. Xenon reports the results of the interrogation to Alexia's sister Iris. Shadow knows nothing, and the strength he shows is too weak to beat Alexia. So they both agree that Shadow is most likely not the kidnapper. But Iris is so vigilant that she sends the knights to follow Shadow after releasing him. Just then, a quarrel in the school draws her attention. Through the window, she sees Shadow's sister, Claire, valiantly coming to her brother's defense. Claire believes that her brother would never engage in the kidnapping of the princess. She boldly announces her intent to duel with the interrogating knights, and other students are trying hard to stop her. Witnessing the scene, Iris can't help but reflect on the close relationship she once shared with her sister Alexia, who has gradually distanced from her over time. Meanwhile, Alexia is very weak, because the researcher has been drawing blood from her but only giving her some non-nutritious rice. Shadow is no better than her. He is thrown out by the knights and covered in scars. On the way back to his dormitory, Shadow senses someone spying on him. Just then, a mysterious girl shows up to help him solve the stalker. Soon the mysterious girl appears in Shadow's dormitory. She turns out to be the leader of Shadow 7, Alpha. Seeing Shadow is hungry, she brings him a burger and watches him eating with strong affection. Alpha tells Shadow that their organization has expanded a lot and is trying to catch up with the cult of Diabolos. Shadow believes Alpha is just kindly accompanying him to play the game of kindness fighting with evilness. He never thinks that the cult of Diabolos, an organization he fabricated, actually exists. However, he takes pleasure in portraying the role of a dark hero, casually asking about the recent achievements of this organization. Alpha then reveals to Shadow that some members of the cult of Diabolos may have been undercover in the Knights. They may be the real kidnappers and are extracting Alexia's blood as part of a larger conspiracy. Before leaving, Alpha asks Shadow if he wants to kill the two Knights who interrogated him. Shadow decides to let them go for the time being because others can easily suspect that he is the criminal who takes revenge on the interrogators. A few more days with hidden turbulence pass by. Shadow quietly gets rid of the new stalker. With the decent money he made from Alexia, Shadow has been buying antiques to set up his secret stronghold whenever he has time. Just then, a hot girl sneaks into the stronghold, who turns out to be the elf girl Beta, ranking second in Shadow 7. She has always admired Shadow and reveals to him that they've gathered hundreds of people in the royal capital, ready to attack the various strongholds of the cult of Diabolos at the same time. Shadow is shocked, thinking that these people are all actors hired by his companions. In fact, they are all elites carefully recruited by Shadow 7, and this will also be the first large-scale external battle organized by them, in which all members of Shadow 7 will join. Shadow interrupts Beta, saying that he will not miss such an exciting game and taking the initiative to attack. The undercover members of the cult of Diabolos never expect they are about to die. As Shadow reappears, they seize the opportunity to throw Alexia's shoes at him, framing him for the kidnapping incident. Just then, two lifeless bodies appear before them, which turns out to be the stalkers who had been spying on Shadow. Seizing the moment while the knights are momentarily distracted, Shadow initiates an assault. The two knights are the men who tortured Shadow during the interrogation, and their demise at Shadow's hands seems to be a fitting retribution. Meanwhile, Shadow 7 launches an attack on the cult of Diabolos, and the royal capital is completely thrown into chaos. The researcher gets furious because he realizes that he is about to be exposed, and he has no time to do more experiments. He then directly injects Alexia's blood into the monster's body, which immediately gets enlarged. The monster soon kills the researcher. After he cuts off the magical locking device on Alexia, the monster drills out through the underground. Alexia, who has regained her freedom, meets Xenon, and Xenon is exactly the real criminal who led the kidnapping. He intends to use the research result of the royal blood to exchange for benefits to become one of the 12 knights of the cult of Diabolos. Alexia is so upset that she abandons the basic sword skills she is familiar with, trying to defeat Xenon with the more lethal genius sword skill. However, there is a huge strength gap between her and Xenon, who knocks Alexia out with little effort. At this desperate moment, Shadow shows up. A fierce battle is about to begin. Meanwhile, the enlarged monster faces a relentless assault. However, the firearms wielded by the soldiers and the swords carried by the knights prove ineffective against them. To make matters worse, the monster not only becomes larger but also possesses a formidable regeneration ability. Just then, Princess Iris, whose strength ranks very high in the kingdom, also enters the battlefield. Her participation ultimately makes the monster turn to the downside. She performs a genius sword skill that combines speed and destruction, hoping to kill the monster before it can regenerate. Just then, Shadow's subordinate, Alpha, stops Iris. She shows a far more powerful attack than Iris, killing the monster with just one attack. When the monster dies, it turns back to its human maiden form. A photo of a girl and her father is dropped on the ground, and the girl's father turns out to be the man who kidnapped Claire. Before leaving, Alpha tells Iris that she belongs to the Shadow Garden. Iris never expected that such a powerful organization would be born in the kingdom without her realizing it. Now it's Shadow's turn. The master of Shadow Garden disguises himself when shows up in front of Xenon and Alexia, neither of whom recognizes the mysterious person with a strong aura as the weak Shadow in the school. Confident in his strength, Xenon takes the initiative to attack Shadow, but he doesn't win after fighting several rounds. Taking immense pride in his abilities, Xenon has never expected he will be defeated. He doesn't even notice Shadow has been effortlessly defending all the time. Before Xenon can unleash his full potential, Shadow loses his patience and provokes Xenon with words. Feeling irritated, Xenon performs his strongest move. The two then back into a heated battle. Just then, Alexia notices that the mysterious man has repelled Xenon's attack using only basic swordsmanship. Alexia was once frustrated because her basic swordplay was not comparable to Iris's innate talent, but now she seems to regain her confidence. The battle between Shadow and Xenon also reaches a result. Shadow defeats Xenon's gorgeous swordsmanship with his ordinary swordplay. Xenon asks who Shadow is, and Shadow tells Xenon that he is from the Shadow Garden and specializes in hunting members of the Diabolos cult. This is the first time Alexia has heard about the Shadow Garden and the cult. That's when Xenon makes a final struggle, taking a strength-boosting drug. After a painful wail, he completes his transformation like how Son Goku transforms into Super Saiyan in Dragon Ball. The drug has greatly improved Xenon's strength and confidence, and he is sure that he will win this battle. Soon Xenon launches a more lethal attack with his body glowing a blinding red, which makes Alexia unable to see the details of the battle. At that very moment, the long-awaited climax arrives. Shadow effortlessly blocks Xenon's assault with his magic glowing purple. Xenon is astonished to realize that Shadow's magical prowess is at least 10 times greater than his. Later, Shadow shares the enlightenment he earned from his struggling experience. In his original world, no matter how hard he practiced, he could never block the exploding nuclear bomb with his physical body. Consequently, he realizes that if he doesn't want to be killed by the nuclear bomb, he must make himself as powerful as the bomb. Before killing Xenon, Shadow says the last words to him, "I am a nuclear bomb." A huge explosion then directly breaks through the ground, illuminating the darkness with blinding light. Shadow 7 on a mission feels the strength of the leader Shadow, having only loyalty, adoration, and affection for him. Looking at the crater created by the explosion, Alexia is shortly distracted. She then picks up the sword on the ground, along with Alexia's confidence. Just then, Iris finds Alexia and hugs her. At this moment, Alexia doesn't alienate Iris, though her strength may still be not comparable to Iris. After the turmoil, the days return to normal. Alexia tells Shadow that she likes basic swordplay now, and she would change her attitude because she witnessed the power of the mysterious man. Alexia believes that one day her basic swordplay will also usher in a transformation. After that, Alexia gets blushed and asks if Shadow is willing to have a formal relationship with her. As Shadow rejects her, he is slashed by Alexia's sword. Seriously injured, Shadow runs into a girl holding a book when he leaves school. The loving filter shows they seem to fall in love soon. At the same time, the girls of the Shadow 7 assemble for a meeting, praising Shadow's powerful strength. The long-term plan of the Shadow 7 is to investigate the cult of Diabolos, find their stronghold, and completely destroy the organization. Nonetheless, there is a more pressing issue waiting for them. That is, several liars pretending to be members of the Shadow Garden in public. Feeling furious, the Shadow 7 make up their mind to find this fraudulent group. Meanwhile, Iris gathers her most trusted knights because she wants to set up a new investigation department to investigate in depth the origin of the cult of Diabolos and the Shadow Garden. Not long after, some serial killers appear in the royal capital. They kill people around while pretending to be the Shadow Garden created by Shadow, which causes the atmosphere in the royal capital to be tense, and everyone is afraid that they will become the next victim. However, the tension only spreads to ordinary civilians. Many teachers and students from the school Shadow attends are quite powerful, and they never worry about criminals breaking in and killing, so they still live a noisy but happy life as usual. In contrast to them, Princess Iris is under pressure now. She convenes a meeting with her sister, Alexia, the school's vice headmaster, Ruslan, and Sherry, Ruslan's adopted daughter. It turns out that there is a recent breakthrough in the investigation of Alexia's kidnapping incidents. A cross-shaped artifact was found at the scene. Knowing Sherry is knowledgeable, Iris intends to seek her expertise in tracing the artifact's origins. Encouraged by her adoptive father Ruslan, Sherry accepts the task. Iris sends a newly formed Crimson Knight to protect Sherry, and Alexia also joins the investigation against the kidnappers. A new crisis is coming. After school, Shadow is dragged by two classmates to go shopping and happens to see a store launch a new product named chocolate. Shadow did not expect that there would be chocolate in this world, so he wants to buy some to taste. But the store has been viral, and there is a long queue. Just then, New, a staff at the store, approaches Shadow and invites him to participate in a questionnaire alone. Soon Shadow senses that something is wrong. New is not as enthusiastic as just now, ignoring him the whole time. Led by New, Shadow sees a group of respectful waitresses, as well as Gamma, an old acquaintance of Shadow. Only then does Shadow realize that the store is run by Shadow 7. Years ago, Shadow shared some details about his previous life on Earth with Gamma, which included recipes for making chocolate and various snacks. Surprisingly, the intelligent Gamma successfully creates the chocolate and uses her remarkable business talents to establish a large department store. Shadow is delighted to sit on the throne that Gamma prepares for him, with more than a dozen beautiful girls kneeling in front of him. At this moment, Shadow is like an emperor with a luxurious harem. Then, Gamma brings more good news to Shadow. She launched a home delivery shopping service for orders above 9.9 according to the sales method that Shadow talked about. Now her business has spread in and outside of the kingdom, earning an amazing fortune of up to 1,200,000,000 for Shadow. Gamma worships Shadow blindly, and even an ordinary act of Shadow will be interpreted by her as a wise one. For example, Shadow just comes to buy chocolate this time, but Gamma thinks he's here to investigate the imposters disguised as Shadow Garden. She then sends New to help Shadow investigate it. Until now, Shadow realizes someone has been impersonating them. Having spent too much time with Gamma, Shadow and his two classmates are going to miss curfew. While rushing to school, Shadow suddenly hears someone fighting nearby. Suspecting that the imposters may have appeared, he pretends to have a stomachache and tells his classmates he needs to relieve himself in the alley. At Shadow's urging, the two classmates decide to rush back to school first. They vow to keep Shadow's pooping on the street secret. At this moment, they seem like in the tragedy of being separated by death. After that, Shadow changes into his disguise. In the high air, he sees Alexia fighting the mysterious imposter. When Alexia just knocks down one, more reinforcements are coming. At the critical moment of Alexia under siege and being about to die, Shadow shows up and scares off the imposters with his super strength. Before Alexia can inquire about Shadow's identity and intentions, she collapses due to her severe injuries. Luckily, Shadow manages to catch up with the imposters and eliminates them, sparing only one survivor for New to interrogate. The imposter attempts to sneak up on New, who appears physically vulnerable, only to be defeated by her with a single sword. Shortly thereafter, news of the imposter's disappearance reaches their headquarters. A fierce battle is about to start. When Alexia reports her latest findings, Iris learns that someone is impersonating the Shadow Garden to kill people. Iris tells Alexia that she will eliminate all forces that undermine the stability of the kingdom, including Shadow Garden and the Diablo's cult. Unlike the princesses who have been worried about the kingdom, Shadow's classmates only worry that they will remain single until graduation. They give the chocolate they bought yesterday to the girls they like, only to get beaten up by one girl's fiancé and treated as a pervert by the other. In order to disguise himself as an ordinary person like his two classmates, Shadow casually gives his chocolate to the first girl he meets, but he doesn't expect that this girl is Sherry, the girl he has met once before. Learning that his daughter has been gifted chocolate, Ruslan explains to Sherry that it means love at first sight. Sherry, who has yet to experience romantic feelings, blushes and feels bashful discussing the topic. Just then, Ruslan begins to cough uncontrollably. It seems that he is suffering from a serious disease. After Ruslan leaves, Sherry begins to stare at the chocolate, unable to focus on researching the relic. She is thinking about how to respond to Shadow. At this moment, Shadow does not know that he is being targeted by Sherry. New has stolen a school uniform to infiltrate the school and is reporting to him. She interrogated the person who impersonated the Shadow Garden, but unfortunately, the imposter was brainwashed. New tells Shadow the cult of Diablos loves to brainwash its members, and that the imposters were probably to lure out the Shadow Garden. Recently, the Shadow Garden has just tracked down Rex, a named first child of the cult, who is secretly taking action in the royal capital. Shadow still feels that the cult of Diablos is just made up by himself, so he does not listen carefully to news intelligence the whole time. Not long ago, 2 of Shadow's classmates helped him sign up for the school tournament, which made Shadow a little excited, and he began to think about how to perfectly play Ordinary in the game. New looks at the calm Shadow. Recalling that Shadow 7 once said that Shadow can always think of battle plans quietly, she misunderstands that Shadow has already thought of a way to deal with the cult of Diablos, which makes her admire Shadow even more. With the commencement of the tournament, Shadow's sister, Claire, kicks off a series of victories, sparking discussions among students about who holds more strength between her and Rose, the student council president. Interestingly, Rose happens to face off against Shadow in a duel, which greatly pleases Shadow. He has come up with a flawless strategy for his disguise. For Shadow, Rose's movements appear as sluggish as a turtle. He takes a chance to throw a bag of plasma in his mouth and pretends to be defeated, vomiting blood. When the referee announces Rose as the winner, Shadow begins to play a weak man with a strong desire to win. He pretends to struggle to fight Rose again, and to get knocked out. The drama king acts to get up again and again after being knocked to the ground. In the end, the referee can't stand it and forcibly announces that Rose has won. Looking at Shadow, who still wants to continue fighting, Rose is getting attracted to this stubborn boy. Depressed, Shadow deliberately wraps several layers of bandages on his head to look like an injured person, and that's when Sherry finds him. Sherry gives Shadow the cookies she made as a gift in return, offering to start with friends, which means to get along slowly and then go further into lovers. The funny thing is that Shadow doesn't remember giving her chocolate, and he doesn't understand why Sherry comes to him. Just then, the vice principal Ruslan shows up. He has been secretly observing the crush of his adopted daughter. Shadow has investigated the great figures of the kingdom, so he knows the man in front of him is a master of both scholastic and martial arts. In order to play the role of an ordinary student, Shadow does not want to be involved with the daughter of the big man, so he decides to distance himself from Sherry as much as possible. But the reality is going in the opposite direction. Sherry can't help missing Shadow when she returns to the dormitory. Just then, the figure of Shadow's gossip girlfriend Alexia flashes through her mind. At the same time, Alexia is tasting a new popular coffee. She likes unsweetened black coffee the most. Suddenly, Sherry finds her. In contrast to Alexia, Sherry adds lots of sugar to her coffee, but the two girls share a similar preference for boys. Later, Sherry asks Alexia about the rumors between her and Shadow. Alexia clarifies that they are just pretending to be a couple, which puts a smile on Sherry's face. Seeing her expression, Alexia realizes that Sherry also has an affection for Shadow. As a result, the proud princess feels jealous for the first time in her life. Shadow doesn't know that he has become a rage among many girls. His classmates gossip every day while Shadow has no intention of joining the discussion at all. The only thing he cares about is when he can play dumb again. Soon the opportunity comes to Shadow when Rose presides over an election meeting for student council officials. On this day, the cult of Diablos launches an attack on the school, and a red light mask completely envelopes the school. Shadow is the first to realize that he can't use magic, and then several attackers rush into the classroom. Rose, being unable to use magic, is no match for them at all. At the critical moment, Shadow blocks the fatal blow for Rose. The drama king starts his show again. Rose mistakes that Shadow likes her, or he wouldn't fend off the attack at the risk of death. Shadow closes his eyes and his heart seems to stop beating, recalling their brief acquaintance. Rose can't help but cry. Members of the cult of Diablos then begin to force the students to gather. Just when they leave, Shadow wakes up. He skillfully uses his magic to feign death, effectively deceiving everyone, while most of the students and teachers cannot control their magic accurately because of the anti-magic barrier. However, Shadow stands out as an exception, as he possesses the unique ability to disassemble mana into smaller units and manipulate it at will, just as small fish can pass through the grid of a fishing net. Shadow comes to the rooftop because he can have the best view of the school from above. The situation of invaders, knights, and hostages is all under his surveillance. The anti-magic barrier is too terrifying, so Iris and the knights do not dare to venture in. Therefore, Shadow has to deal with all the invaders alone. Shadow is very excited. Though there were various games in his previous world, they were all virtual after all. The immersive battle that may cause death is what excites Shadow, who soon starts his hunt. Meanwhile, the members of the cult also take action. The elite of the cult Rex mentioned by New not long ago wants to kill Sherry and snatch the mysterious artifact from her. Fortunately, two high-ranking knights arrive in time and take the orders of Princess Iris to protect Sherry. These two knights are stronger than the regular students and teachers in the academy, and they buy Sherry some valuable time to flee. However, Sherry is so clumsy that she attracts the attention of the cult members several times. Fortunately, Shadow also notices Sherry, and every time the cult member discovers Sherry, Shadow will secretly kill them. The slow girl Sherry thinks she has never been discovered. Now she is going to her adoptive father Ruslan's room to look up the documents and investigate the anti-magic barrier. Interestingly, despite Shadow's assistance in thwarting the cult members along the way, the careless Sherry still stumbles without being pursued. As a result, Shadow can only show up to hold her. Upon reaching her, the first thing he says to Sherry is to take off the noisy slippers she wears. Safeguarded by Shadow, Sherry successfully traces the origin of the barrier. It is said that there is an ancient artifact called the Eye of Avarice, which possesses the unique ability to absorb the magic of nearby people. Furthermore, it can memorize the mana characteristics of each person, enabling those intruders to use mana without being restrained. Sherry also discovers that once the Eye of Avarice absorbs too much mana, it will release all at once, and the entire school will be completely destroyed. The only thing that can deal with the Eye of Avarice now is the artifact in Sherry's hand, but there are still two problems. One is that Sherry still needs some materials to make the artifact effective, and the other is they haven't figured out a way to get close to the Eye of Avarice. Shadow sets out to help Sherry find materials, while the arrogant Rex does not know that he is about to encounter a strong enemy. Shadow. Rex is reporting to a mysterious man that several high-ranking warriors have been killed. The mysterious man in strange armor immediately realizes that the murderer must be from the Shadow Garden. He then arranges for Rex to take for assistance to catch the lurker. Rex is casual at first, but when 4 of his companions are killed in an instant, he finally begins to panic. Shadow is so fast that Rex can't see his face but is beaten the whole time. He retreats to a classroom, where he is horrified to find that there are full of the corpses of his companions. Just then, Shadow attacks him from behind. After dealing with Rex, Shadow goes to Sherry's room to collect materials, where he happens to meet Nu, who then reports to Shadow that the kingdom's reinforcements have a dispute over the command, and most members of the Shadow 7 are now absent from the royal capital. Learning of this, Shadow remains calm. Facing a formidable organization alone seems to make him even more excited. Shadow meticulously outlines his strategy for the impending confrontation, further elevating Nu's admiration for him. Little does she realize that Shadow's knowledge about the Eye of Avarice is a result of Sherry's diligent research efforts. As the atmosphere in the academy is getting tense, a fierce war is about to break out. Shadow brings Sherry the materials she needs, and Sherry finally creates a special device that can restrain the Eye of Avarice. The girl comes to the hall through a secret passage, and she throws the device hard at the leader of the intruders. In an instant, the red light that enveloped the school disappears, and the students, finding some of their magic power recovered, immediately rise to resist. At this moment, Shadow finds the leader of the intruder, whom he recognizes as the adoptive father Ruslan of Sherry, based on the way he walks. Confident in his ability to eliminate Shadow effortlessly, Ruslan discards his disguise and proceeds to unveil his perfect plan with an air of self-assuredness. When he was young, Ruslan was a formidable swordmaster. However, he later succumbed to an unusual disease that severely diminished his strength. Learning that the Eye of Avarice may cure his disease, Ruslan found Sherry's mother, hoping the scholar could unlock the secrets of the artifact and provide a cure for his disease. However, Sherry's mother rejected Ruslan because she thought the eye was too dangerous. Then, Ruslan brutally killed her. The vicious man also pretended to be kind and adopted Sherry, and since then Ruslan has used this adopted daughter to continue the study of the eye. Shadow dresses as the leader of Shadow Garden, preparing to kill the scum. Ruslan, who then senses the power of the enemy and immediately activates the eye. Ruslan has discovered that the device that controls the Eye of Avarice can emit stronger power, but Sherry doesn't know that. That's why Ruslan could use Sherry to help him research the relic. At this moment, Ruslan has the same great power as when he was young, but he is not provoking an ordinary swordsman. Shadow kills Ruslan brutally, just like how Ruslan killed Sherry's mother. It is tit for tat. As Shadow is going to leave, he encounters Sherry, who is overwhelmed by the death of her adoptive father and fails to identify the Shadow Garden's leader as Shadow. Fearing that revealing her adoptive father's true nature as a villain would only compound her sorrow, Shadow quietly leaves. After the incident, Sherry decides to study in another city. Shadow is also about to leave the city. Alpha writes to inform her companions to assemble at the sacred city, where she discovered important information. Here I'm gonna focus on Epsilon from Shadow 7, who is very dissatisfied with her figure. Therefore, she often uses slimes that can change shape to disguise her plump pectorals, and she is ready to seduce Shadow with her disguised sexy body. All girls in Shadow 7 are very obsessed with Shadow, which causes them to be jealous of each other. Beta notices that Epsilon is using slime to disguise her figure and immediately throws back her shoulders to show her F-cup. They decide to have a competition in the sacred city. Interestingly, their destination is the same as Princess Alexia Alexia's as she is preparing for a significant event in the same city. She convinces Iris to accompany her to Gamma's department store for some shopping before their departure. Seeing the sexy lingerie, Iris is extremely shocked. She is very conservative and adamantly stops her sister from wearing it. But Alexia doesn't listen to her sister's advice at all. She is very confident in her figure. Speechless, Iris suspects that her sister is in love. Actually, the student council president Rose is the one in love. When Shadow blocked an attack for her, Rose mistakenly thought Shadow liked her, and since then, she has followed Shadow wherever he goes. Shadow runs into Rose on his way to the sacred city, and Rose surely follows him as she would even go to the restroom with Shadow. Meanwhile, Shadow is thinking women will only impede his fighting efficiency, but Shadow worries that if he tells the truth, he will be hacked to death by Rose. After all, once a woman is angry, she is 10,000 times more terrifying than the Demon King. After arriving at the sacred city, Rose drags Shadow to a cartoonist's book signing session, where Shadow is shocked to see the cartoonist's works, a series of popular manga on Earth, such as Dragon Ball, One Piece, Naruto, Demon Slayer, and so on. Shadow suspects that there are other transmigrationers in this world, and when he takes the manga to meet the author, he sees an acquaintance. The author turns out to be Beta from Shadow 7. Beta has always liked literature, and Shadow once talked to her about the manga he had read on Earth, but he didn't expect the girl would copy them. Shadow has to give up the idea that there might be other transmigrationers. Instead, he goes to a hot spring to remove the fatigue after a long journey. This is a mixed hot spring where he encounters Alexia. The princess exudes confidence in her physique and playfully strikes various poses to attract Shadow's attention. However, Shadow remains nonchalant, not even bothering to open his eyes, and teases Alexia, asking if she's attracted by his big thing. Alexia is taken aback by Shadow's cheekiness. Soon the largest church is hosting a big event in the sacred city, where each registered fighter will summon a hero's soul that defeated the Demon King Diablos while alive. The stronger the fighter is, the stronger soul he can summon. While attending the event as a guest, Alexia is struck by the huge pectorals of Beta. In terms of the body figure, the proud princess has completely lost to Beta. Alexia vows to exercise her pectoralis muscles when she returns, and then an accident happens. Rose secretly signed up for Shadow, who is worried about exposing his real strength once he summons the strongest hero. Hence, he secretly transforms into the leader of Shadow Garden to sabotage the event. To everyone's surprise, Shadow summons the Calamity Witch Aurora, who is rumored to be as terrifying as Diablos. Even such a strong opponent loses to Shadow while he hasn't exposed his full strength. Following Aurora's defeat, a portal appears, sucking Shadow in. In this very moment, Alpha comes with the members of the Shadow Garden, successfully captures several church leaders, and Beta, who has taken on the guise of a renowned cartoonist. After that, they venture into the portal. Intrigued and curious, Alexia and Rose also follow them to the portal, but Alexia accidentally falls on Beta during transportation and coincidentally touches Beta's pectoralis muscle, leaving her feeling immensely frustrated once more. Alpha doesn't make trouble for Alexia and Rose because she has more important tasks during this trip. According to the ancient documents she found, this place is called Sanctuary, where the left hand of the Demon King Diablos is sealed. The next words of Alpha surprise everyone. The hero who defeated Diablos, Olivier, was actually the ancestor of Alpha, and she knows the secrets of the cult of Diablos. Alpha then destroys the Sanctuary's magical core, allowing Olivier's sealed memory to reappear. The Diablos cult obtained some of the Demon King's cells, which they tried to use to increase human power, but most of the experiments failed, and Olivier was a rare survivor at the time. The cult drove Olivier to cut off Diablo's left arm, but their real goal was to crack Diablo's amazing regenerative abilities. Through extensive study of Diablo's left arm, the cult managed to create a drug promising everlasting life. However, this drug had two drawbacks. It necessitated an annual dosage to sustain its benefits and could only be produced at a limited rate of 12 beads per year. Consequently, only the elite 12 knights of the round of the cult were granted the privilege to take the drug. One of the church leaders, Nelson, has another identity as the Knight of Round, who has been continuously researching to overcome drug deficiencies. One reason why Shadow 7 became monsters when they were little is that they are descendants of heroes, while the other is they were about to be the follow-up experiments of the cult. The exposed Nelson controls the enchantment of Sanctuary and randomly teleports the people around Alpha, leaving only the Orc Delta in Shadow 7 by Alpha's side. Nelson is very confident in facing them. As the closer he gets to Sanctuary Center, the stronger his power is, while Alpha and the others will be sucked away from their magic and lose their combat power. In an instant, Nelson splits into countless copies of himself ready to kill his opponents. However, the Knight of Round didn't expect that Delta alone could kill all of his doppelgangers without Alpha even making a move. Although Epsilon is transported elsewhere, she maintains her confidence in the capabilities of her companions. Rather than rushing to assist Alpha, she dedicates her time to studying ancient documents with others. As their magical power is sucked away by the sanctuary, the slime-based equipment they wear is also impacted. Consequently, others notice the slime covering Epsilon's disguised pectoral muscles, yet they choose to ignore it, fearing that Epsilon would kill them. After gathering the information they need, they quickly leave the center to join Alpha. Meanwhile, Nelson, seeing that his opponent is getting stronger, releases the sealed Olivier for a decisive battle. But Alpha has already got the information she needs, so she does not intend to continue the battle at all, directly leaving with her companions. Nelson, fearing the strength of Alpha and her companions, does not dare to chase after them. Just then, Sanctuary is alerted that someone has broken into the central area, and the one turns out to be Shadow, along with the Calamity Witch Aurora, who is only part of the soul and does not have a complete memory. She was sealed by the Diablos cult and Sanctuary for research, and when Shadow met this poor woman, he decided to help her regain her freedom. Now, the biggest problem for Shadow is the Olivier brought by Nelson. In Aurora's mutilated memories, Olivier is quite strong. She tells Shadow that they can't defeat this formidable enemy, but Shadow's power far exceeds her expectations, and he eliminates Olivier with just a few injuries. Suddenly, Nelson summons countless Olivier's copies. Incredibly, he possesses such a large number of ancient heroes' copies. While this circumstance might startle and intimidate others, for Shadow, dealing with an adversary of such a level only develops his excitement. When confronting absolute power, all forms of deception become futile. Shadow concentrates his magical power to break the spell, obliterates the entire sanctuary with a single sword, and kills all the replicas. Now, only Aurora is left by Shadow's side, but soon the mutilated soul will dissipate. In fact, she knew from the beginning that she would disappear once she left Sanctuary, but she wanted to do it anyway. Before disappearing completely, Aurora asks Shadow to find her main body to complete a secret commission. The event this time shocks Alexia, who can no longer estimate how strong Alpha and her companions are. Then, she teams up with Beta and Rose to investigate the shared intelligence from Shadow Garden. I wonder how Alexia will feel if she knows Beta is a member of Shadow 7. After that, Alexia goes to meet with her sister Iris. As the churches on the mainland are seriously infiltrated by the undercover agents of the Diablos cult, and Shadow Garden has not taken a stand yet, Alexia suggests that Iris must find out the conspiracy behind these forces. Regrettably, the truth will forever remain elusive to Alexia, as Shadow, the leader of Shadow Garden, is too difficult to see through. Lately, he has come up with an idea, that is, creating a fabricated identity and joining in the Bushin Festival tournament organized by the church. He intends to create a weak appearance with soft slime and triumph over opponents one by one to advance, making the audience's mental activity change from initial disregard to eventual astonishment. The day before the competition, Shadow packs a lot of food at McDonald's. Shadow 7 has developed a lot of food and goods on Earth based on what Shadow saw in his past life. When Shadow is about to go home for a big meal, he bumps into Rose on the way. From their conversation, it's revealed that Rose's country pursues art rather than force, and Rose practices martial arts against the king's order because she was saved by a mysterious person when she was a child, and since then, she has longed for the power to protect others. But Rose doesn't know the mysterious person is actually Shadow. Soon the tournament begins, but two accidents occur. One is that Shadow's disguised low-level fighter keeps winning, making the audience completely unbelievable. The other accident is related to Rose, who absconds after stabbing her fiancé. Alexia comes to Beta. She pulls her by the collar and asks her to investigate what happened to Rose. Beta reluctantly agrees while tidying up her clothes, looking like she doesn't want to get involved in the trouble. In fact, Shadow Garden has been keeping an eye on Rose, and Alexia receives Rose's movement just after leaving Beta. During the time of Rose's disappearance, the tournament continues. When Shadow is watching the game, he encounters a mysterious woman named Beatrix who is looking for her missing niece. Shadow finds that she looks exactly like Alpha, and the combat power she inadvertently displayed is quite strong. At present, Shadow is busy disguising himself to participate in the competition, leaving him with limited interaction with Beatrix. After changing his appearance, Shadow faces his adversary, a formidable man named Goldie. Although notably skilled and possessing considerable strength, Goldie will avoid encountering powerful adversaries, thereby maintaining an undefeated record and is known as the Myth of Undefeated. Golden shows his strongest trick, trying to win both the competition and the worship of others. Just then, Shadow sneezes, causing the weapon to poke Goldie and thus defeats him. Shadow once again disguises his victory as an accident. Meanwhile, covered in injuries, Rose is unable to hold on. As she recalls, the truth finally becomes clear. Not long ago, Rose went to see her father, but to find her fiancé Perv took control of the old king. Rose decisively attacked Perv, only to be framed by Perv and his accomplices. While Rose is wanted, she also faces another tricky problem. Like Alpha, Rose is also a descendant of heroes, and she has been hovering out of control at any time after being injured. That's when Rose meets someone who changes her life. Shadow, dressing up as the leader of Shadow Garden, helps her back to her senses, for which Rose is so grateful that she decides to continue her unfinished mission. After rescuing Rose, Shadow changes back to an inconspicuous appearance to join in the competition. This time, Shadow faces a formidable adversary, Rose, who has been closely watching Shadow's previous matches, and believes that his victories seem to be achieved by accidents, but he actually had some hidden attacks that were too fast for ordinary onlookers to discover. Rose knows that Shadow is not easy to deal with, so she uses her strongest tricks right away. However, the gap in strength between them is too big, and Shadow creates another accident to easily defeat her. Perv, who is watching the battle, gets very concerned about this and immediately orders to investigate this mysterious contestant. When Rose is getting treated after the competition, she offers a generous deal to invite Shadow to join her home country because she admires him very much. However, Shadow has his powerful Shadow Empire, so the temptations offered by Rose fail to impress him. Soon comes the day of the final of the tournament, during when Perv intends to control the king to assassinate Iris's father, and thus provokes a war between the two countries to seize power while the chaos is in place. However, there are many variables in his plan, the first of which is that Iris invites Beatrix as an audience. Perv has heard of this woman, who is nicknamed Martial Goddess and is stronger than Iris. Therefore, Perv kind of fears Beatrix. Another variable is Shadow, who successfully disguises himself as a passerby until he reaches the finals. Throughout the duel, Princess Iris keeps warning herself. Regardless of the defensive stances she adopts, she is plagued by the persistent fear of being killed. Always being proud, Iris cannot accept to give up the competition without fighting. Thus, she performs her strongest blow, only to have her opponent effortlessly seize control of her neck. Consequently, victory is swiftly determined within a single round. Nobody can estimate how powerful Shadow is, and Perv missed this variable to cause the plan to fail. Just then, Rose appears in the audience. She can't bear to see her father become a puppet controlled by Perv, and finally ends the life of her loved one with her own hands. After that, she is ready to kill herself to follow her father. At this moment, Shadow rushes over in the form of the leader of Shadow Garden. Such a close encounter reminds Rose of a past. She was once kidnapped when she was a child. Fortunately, a mysterious person came to her rescue. Rose senses a familiar feeling in the head of Shadow Garden, and she is sure that he is the mysterious person back then. Encouraged by Shadow, Rose perks up, but then Beatrix suddenly attacks Shadow. Soon, Iris joins the battle to fight Shadow, using an ancient weapon to increase her strength. Beatrix initiates the battle because of her admiration for the strong, while Iris is trying to eliminate Shadow, the hidden danger for the kingdom. Yet, they underestimate Shadow's prowess. Despite the considerable might of the female warriors, they find themselves at a distinct disadvantage when Shadow takes them a little seriously. Although Iris and Beatrix perform the best of their lives, they are ultimately defeated by Shadow. Frustrated but undeterred, Iris warns Shadow that the kingdom's knights are rushing here. She intends to use their numerical superiority to consume Shadow's energy. Undeterred at all the warning, Shadow unleashes a huge circle of purple light that envelopes the city. By demonstrating his strength, Shadow tells Iris that if he wants the entire city, everyone will be killed in a second. Shadow is gone when the harsh light dissipates. Iris and Beatrix are never his end, as he is always on his way to finding a stronger enemy. Following that day, the members of Shadow 7 continue to activate throughout the continent. Some engage in business to secure funding for the organization, while others are dedicated to intelligence-gathering tasks. Rose, in response to Alpha's invitation, becomes an official member of Shadow Garden. During her initial training session, her attire is completely torn apart by the instructor's assault. Perhaps this signifies her farewell to her previous life. Here brings the end of the first season of The Eminence in Shadow. In this anime, you can enjoy exciting power struggles, stirring battles, and seductive harem plots at the same time. But what I'm most interested in is the type of girl the male protagonist will meet and the kind of harem he will build in the next season. If you are looking forward to the following episodes as me, please leave a ditto in the comment area. The more likes I get, the faster I will upload the next season's recap. Finally, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. There will also be other interesting anime recaps on my channel. See you in the next video. Bye!